Off we go then. Hello and welcome to the second episode of CJ's Racing World. My name is Ian Davies. I'm anchoring this podcast, but let's get straight over to the leading light of the production, Miss CJ Racing UK. Hello, CJ. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you for asking. Right, we've got lots to get through this week, so let's crack straight on with our first item, which is CJ's Racing Week. And I think we're winding the clock back to Saturday in Ascot. I believe you're at the King George.
I was at the King George, yeah.
Would you like to? Would you like to talk about your day?
Yeah, I did drink a horse in particular impressed me was dual identity. I think he ran a blinder, and considering it was the wrong ground for him, and he's on a high mark, and it's not Sandown. He usually runs really well at Sandown. The ground was plenty quick enough for him, and he's not been beaten by far. So I think that stood out for me really for his run.
Yeah, he ran a great race. That was in the that was actually at in the opening race at Goodwood on Tuesday, the Chesterfield Cup. I thought he ran really well because I thought he ran really well. He was on 97, I think, which is like a pound off his career high. I think the ground was plenty quick enough for him. He was only beaten 3 3/4 lengths. He's very much a Sandown Park horse. I think. I think he's an interesting one. If the handicapper shows him a little bit of kindness and maybe back at his beloved Esher venue, I'm sure he could do well. Would you like to touch upon the King George on Saturday at Ascot?
Talking of the King George, which is what I was supposed to talk about, yeah, the King George was a great day, but slightly controversial with the winner of the actual big race this year.
How so?
I just don't think Christophe Soumillon should be on a horse.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Okie dokie. So, moving forwards to Glorious Goodwood. I believe you're at Goodwood today.
I was at Goodwood today. I found today not to be busy compared to other years that I've gone the past, I don't know, 5-6 years maybe.
I wonder why that was. I wonder if it might have been connected with ticket prices or something.
Quite possibly, yeah. But
what caught your eye on the card? What impressed you most on the day today?
no, the big race was the King George Stakes, and Big Ebbs. Well, I think he turned the tables on Ashfora, because the easier 5 furlongs at Goodwood suited him better than Ascot, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think there's a strong case for saying that. Yeah, I would agree.
That's it, really. I found the card a little underwhelming.
Yeah, I think quite a few people. I mean, it's a great occasion, Goodwood. You know, it's 5 days, great racing. It's a beautiful race course. But in terms of quality, I suppose they do stretch it a bit thin. It's not like Royal Ascot, where like every race is like a top class group race of its type virtually, or an absolutely stonking handicap. Yeah, I mean I agree with you about Big Evs. I mean he won the Windsor Castle Stakes at Royal Ascot last year. He is an Ascot winner, but it's a bit of a stiff 5 at Ascot, as you say. It's an easier 5 at Goodwood. He won the Malcolm there last year, and yeah, I think you could well be right about that. That's probably that could be the factor in him turning the tables on the Australian mare. So we move on now to the second item, which is CJ's hot topics, and I believe you've got 2 of those for us. Would you like to talk about what the first one was?
Yeah, so there was a lot of controversy on Wednesday in the Oak Tree Stakes. Jabara was the first past the post, but only being so by drifting across Rakia, who had to change position off the rail. This was the Jim Crowley horse. And although there was no contact, Jim did have to switch. And the fact that Jim was only beaten ahead, because it was such a fine margin, I believe it was a correct decision. I mean, the switch alone could have cost him more than the head he was beaten by. So the controversy surrounding that, don't really see why people are arguing. It must be money. Obviously, it was a favourite that was first past the post, and they revised it. So yeah, so I agree with that decision. What do you think?
I think for me, it's one of those where I've seen them thrown out and I've seen them keep the race. I mean, there was a time when I used to think in Britain you had to virtually put another horse and jockey over the rails to get thrown out. But I mean, although I didn't see any contact, he's had to switch, and I think it's all down to the fact that he's only beaten ahead. You know, it's a fine margin, and I think that Jim Crowley's articulated himself very well in the stewards' room, which never hurts, and I think he's talked his way into getting that one. It would not have surprised me, to be honest, if the other one had kept the race. I'm sure a lot of the talk was motivated by money. I mean, I didn't have a bet on the race, but to be fair, I mean, you know, punters keep the game going. And although it doesn't get hateful, as long as it doesn't get hateful, whether someone's had 10 pence on a horse or 10 grand, they're entitled to, you know, give their opinion on social media if they
Hmm.
want to. But yeah, I mean, I think, as you say, it's all down to the fact he's only beaten ahead. And if he can argue that he's lost more than that by having to switch, then yeah, he's going to get the race, isn't he? So I'd agree with that. And I believe you've got a second hot topic for us.
Yeah. So the second hot topic is jockeys being slagged off on social media. I can't quite get my head around it. I mean, it's pocket talking because no one wakes up and thinks, right, I'm gonna slag off a jockey today because I feel like it. I mean, some people wake up and think hatred from the moment they open their eyes, but jockeys being slagged off on social media, I don't know why. If you see a horse you like to back and put your hard earned or not hard earned money on, and you see a jockey that you don't like, that you believe is not riding well, should retire, etc., etc., why you back it? Because then it loses, and then you say they're useless, they need to retire. It's not like you don't know who the jockey is when you bet. It's not blind date. What do you think?
I agree. I agree with you. It definitely isn't blind date. I mean, that's a very good point. You know, if you didn't know who was riding your horse when you had a bet, you'd have cause to grumble. You know, if all bets were placed and they actually drew for who rides who just before the race, then fair enough. But if for whatever reason you don't like a jockey, you don't think they're very good, you think they're bad tactically, you don't think they're strong in a finish, you think there's integrity concerns with them, then what for whatever, then why are you backing that horse? Because you know who's going to ride it. So if it gets beat, you know, you've only got yourself to blame. And I think the problem is that people don't want to take responsibility. Instead of being annoyed with themselves for having backed a horse ridden by a jockey they don't rate, it's a lot easier to be annoyed with the jockey. But the trouble is that, like, you know, if you do that every day of the week, you're never going to become a better punter. You know, I mean, you know, a poor jockey will always be a poor jockey. You know, and you know, it's all down to opinions anyway. But I mean, you know, the only way you can fix it as a punter is to be more selective. God knows there are enough horse races to bet on. So you know, if you don't like the jockey, swerve the bet. So yes, I'm in complete agreement with you there,
Mm,
actually. Right. Are you ready to move on to the next
I
item?
am.
Excellent. Right. So the third item is CJ's best racing bets. Now, I need to repeat the caveat of last week. This is not a tipping show. These are CJ's bets. She's not suggesting that you necessarily follow her in, but you can if you want to. That said, the lady made a good start last week. She put up 3 horses. She had a winner at 9-4, Alflela at York. Last time I did any sums or settled a bet, that's a level stakes profit. And I would also point out that she was quite bold in opposing August Rodan, who at the time was 5-4 favourite overnight for the King George. CJ said she thought the horse was completely unreliable. He'd run 3 shockers in his life. Well, I think you can make it 4 shockers after last Saturday. So she's done just cracking there. Anyway, that's enough of a plug for last week. You're only as good as your last winner. So moving on to this week, I believe you've got 3 horses for the last day of glorious Goodwood for us. So over to you to talk about them.
Yeah, so I've backed Al Assi in the first at Goodwood tomorrow. He's a bit of a character, really. He's best of these on official ratings. So he'd be giving them all weight in a handicap. He isn't a big price, but if he is in the mood, he wins. Simple as that.
Fair enough. So that's in the 150. I'll do a little summary at the end, just if anyone's wanting to write it down at times and things. And what's the
I
second
am
one?
going with Apollo 1 in the Stewards Cup. Apollo 1 was second in this race last year. I think he's a quality 6-year-old sprinter who seems better than ever. He's run 2 really good races, one at Newmarket Guineas and one at the Derby meeting. You can ignore his last run. The high draw doesn't really bother me, and I think I got 16-1 each way, still up 4, and up to 8 places you can get, which seems fair. And of course, you could probably get even better win only on the exchange.
Fantastic. That's 2 of them. And what's your third?
Third, I have done Great Bedouin in the 225. Lightly raced, only up £4 for winning at Newbury, and if it stays 1 mile 6, I think it looks a good bet at 9-1.
Fair enough. That's 3 very interesting races, horses for Goodwood tomorrow. So just to summarise, if anyone wants them in chronological order. So we've got Al-Azi in the 150 at Goodwood, the Glorious Stakes. He was 7-2 just before we went on air. And CJ's made a good case there. In the 225, the summer handicap, Great Bedouin, who I think is going blue on odds checker. And I think 9-1 is probably the best you'll get at the moment. But as CJ astutely points out, you might be able to get slightly better on the win-only market on the exchange. And in the Stewards Cup at 335, CJ is going for Apollo 1, 16-1 available, generally 6 places. 8 places, I think, with Sky Bet. And of course, if you're bold and you want to go win only, as CJ rightly says, you might get better on the win only market on the exchange. So that's fantastic. Right, moving on to our next topic, which apparently is entitled CJ's Racing Icks. Now, CJ, Google is forever my friend, including in this instance. But I'd like you to clarify for me. It sounds a slightly negative connotation, but could you, for my benefit, if not everybody else's, just before you proceed, just actually sort of make it clear to me what an ick is?
So an ick is something that annoys you.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Right. Give me your racing icks, please, one at a time.
So this one might be controversial. Fashion segments on racing shows, particularly ITV racing. Only because I don't think I've never seen racing TV do any fashion I don't think I might have seen it on Sky Sports. Maybe they show the odd dress at Royal Ascot, but ITV Racing enjoy all this fashion stuff. I don't care if you want to dress up. I got nothing against people dressing up. I just think they focus too much, especially at Royal Ascot. They focus too much on the fashion side of things, and no one cares. I say no one. Maybe 2% of the population care. I don't. So yeah, that's my ick. That's my first ick.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah, I mean, I'm spared all this because I don't actually watch ITV racing. I just watch the pictures of the races on mute, actually, as all my friends know. I never see any of the in between race stuff or hear anything, and I find I enjoy racing a lot more that way, actually. Okay, well that's terrific. I'm certainly not going to argue with you there. You don't go to a fashion show to see horses galloping around. So why do you watch horse racing to see fashion? So yeah, I'm with you there. Any others?
Yeah. Well, we could go on, but we're not here for all night. But nicknames for tracks really really wind me up.
Do they? Would you like to give me an example?
The worst one I think
Give me
is
what?
Sandy for Sandown. I'm literally cringing just thinking about it. Sandy for Sandown and oh new
Sandy for
new
Sandown.
newbie and and goody for Goodwood.
I've got to play devil's advocate and defend people who use these terms. I mean, that what people who say Sandy for Sandown, I mean, it's a lot of work saying that second syllable, Sandown. To actually go from one syllable to two to say Sandown. I mean, that's quite tiring. There are some people who need to lie down after that, and they certainly wouldn't ever contemplate saying Sandown Park. That would just be too much. They'd have to take a week off work. Newbie from Newbury. Well, same remark applies, really, doesn't it? I mean, I've got a friend who calls Lingfield Park Leafy. He has to call it Leafy all the time, and I'm not. I don't get quite as animated about it as you do, but if he stopped doing it, I wouldn't miss it. Put it that way. So yeah, I agree with you there. Yes, but we live in the era of convenience speak, don't we?
Yeah, I think we could go on with these icks, couldn't we?
I think we could probably do more in future
Yeah.
weeks. I think we would have a never-ending list of icks between us. Actually, I think we'll start working on next week's immediately after we come off
Yeah.
air, because we could come up with quite a few. Okay, right. So moving on to the final item, which is CJ answers your racing questions. Now, I've had CJ's passed on 3 questions to me this week that we've picked out, and many thanks to those who sent them in. As stated last week, we're keeping all questioners anonymous to protect the innocent and not so innocent. Uh, you know, um, you know, those who mean no harm.
Those who do.
I don't think those who do. Those who might be on remand. Right. Okay. Right. Here's a fairly innocent question, CJ. CJ, what do you plan to name your next racehorse?
um Water darling.
Fair enough. May I ask why?
um so there's a story behind this. um I I went on a date with a particularly well spoken man, and ordering drinks, he commented on the way I ordered my drink.
which was water. What did you say? Something like, I don't know. The water in Mallorca don't taste like water.
Not quite. No, it wasn't as bad as that. I said, could
I didn't think it would be.
I said, could I have a bottle of water, please? And when the waiter walked away, he, but the guy I was on a date with, touched my hand across the table, looked me straight in the eye, and he said, "Water, darling."
Did he?
And it stuck as a joke, really, between friends ever since. And yeah, I think it's a nice name for a horse. To be honest, I don't know how some of these names get through the BHA checks. Like Shagran, who won this week.
Well, there's always been a bit of a history of this. I mean, one of my favourite horses from back in the day was called Who Gives a Donald. Can you top that? Can you come up with one to counter Who Gives a Donald?
Dashing Dick.
Fair enough. Okay, well, I'll try and top that. How about Muff Diver?
Fuck off. That was not a name.
There was actually a racehorse once called Muff Diver, and and so yeah, quite a few have got through the net over
I
the
could name a
years.
few.
Yeah, I bet you could. Go on
Old
then.
Cock being a particular favourite of mine. Two in the Pink. There was a French horse called Big Tits. Yeah, I could go on.
Speechless. I am literally without speech. Maybe we'll save some of those for next
I think
week.
we should.
We should. We should. Question two. Oh, this is all serious. This is a bit industry. This is or what path is for serious with us? The questioner asks, CJ, if you're in charge of the BHA, and frankly, that can't happen too soon, in my opinion. If you were in charge of the BHA, what is the first thing that you would change?
Ticket prices.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Presumably, this wouldn't be to increase them.
No, to lower them. I mean, it'd be good if the BHA might make it a condition that all racecourses are licensed to race, and as a condition of getting the fixtures, they cap the prices. It's obviously not going to happen. I generally think ticket prices are too high. I think some places are too high, some are okay. I think there should be more of a universal structure. What would your first thing be to change?
Oh, God knows, it'd be a multiple dead eight. If I got onto what I think is wrong with the BHA, the entire audience would be bored into a coma, and we'd be here all bloody night. So, but I do think that's a good call from you. I don't think the BHA has a whole lot of control over their own sport, and although while I appreciate that, different entities own the race courses, independent owners, jockey club race courses, ARC, etc., and I also appreciate that, there's a difference in between an all class six card on a Tuesday and, I don't know, a day at Royal Ascot. It would be nice to see standardised prices across the board because a few honourable racecourses offer good value for money, and then at the other end of the spectrum there's some downright rip-off merchants, and it would be nice if there was a bit of consumer protection for racegoers, and I think that is actually a very good call from you. Shall we move on to the final
Yep.
question? Right. We are asked, or you are asked, not Kez asked. Right. Um, CJ, what is your favourite race?
Favourite race that I look forward to is probably the Sussex Stakes at Goodwood. It's a championship race. It's 3-year-olds meeting the older horses. It's not confined for just fillies or just for 3-year-olds. And it's how they find out who the best miler is on turf in Europe, if not the world. And yeah, for me, that's the race I most look forward to. What about you?
Oh well, with me, I don't know. It's all betting related for me. I mean, I suppose at the moment I would say my favourite race is the Prix de l'Arc de Triomphe. I'm not going to get into why because no one wants to listen to a whole load of after timing, but it was an absolute quagmire even by Longchamp standards in October a couple of years ago, and I had a particularly good result in it, which kept the wolf from the door for a good while. So yeah, the Prix de l'Arc de Triomphe, and it's a great race in its own right, obviously, and for a lot of the reasons you say. It's an all-age race. It's not confined to one gender or one age group. It's for 3-year-olds and upwards, same as the Sussex Stakes, and it's what I call a proper Group One. So there you go. Right, so I think that just about wraps it up for this week. So it just remains for me to thank everybody who's tuned in, whether it's live or listening to the recording. I can safely say that me and CJ were absolutely blown away by the response last week. Last time I looked, we'd had 1,110 viewings on YouTube alone. I think if you'd asked us this time last week, we'd have taken the 110, never mind going through the 1,000. We're absolutely thrilled. We're also genuinely touched by a lot of very positive feedback that we've had. That's very, very kind of all of you. As stated, I hope you've enjoyed it on some level this evening. I hope you have a fantastic weekend. And CJ and I will look forward and hope that we can have your company again this time next week. Have a great weekend. Goodbye.